Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Kimberly, Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Andrew McCabe was supposed to be retired right now. He'd served in the FBI for more than 2 decades and rose to be the Bureau's deputy director. But on Friday night, around 10 p.m. Eastern, he was stripped of his federal pension just 48 hours before it was set to kick in, fired by Attorney General Jeff Sessions for, quote, lack of candor under oath on multiple occasions. President Trump, a long critic of McCabe, called the termination a great day for democracy. McCabe maintains he was sacked to undermine the credibility of the special counsel's investigation. He's turned over memos of his conversations with the president to Robert Mueller's team. There's, of course, a firestorm of reaction pouring in.
When the president said it was a great day for democracy yesterday, I think it was a horrible day for democracy. To have firings like this happening at the top from the president and the attorney general does not speak well for what's going on.
You know, his firing may be justified. There's no way for us to know at this point. But even though it may have been justified, it can also be tainted.
It was clearly rushed, and I think there are questions about that and whether the administration was putting pressure on the Justice Department to take this action. It appears to have been compressed in order to take vengeance on this guy.
Andy McCabe has undercut his credibility all by himself. He didn't need any help doing that.
Former CIA Director John Brennan didn't hold back his disdain for Mr. Trump on Twitter. Quote, when the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. You may scapegoat Andy McCabe, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you.
That's a little overwrought.
A little over the top there for Mr. Brennan. What I found interesting, Kimberly, is in that montage we just played, yes, Adam Schiff, a pretty partisan Democrat, he said could be a possibility that this firing of McCabe was completely justified. What do you think about the firing?
That tells me everything you kind of need to know. He wouldn't be going out on a limb and saying something like that that might displease his partisan, base that thinks that President Trump is just, running amok here. By saying that tells me that he has knowledge and information to suggest that, in fact, it was justified. I think they wouldn't have go out of their way to do it when they did and how they did it if they didn't have good reason and full cause and hadn't investigated it thoroughly. And in fact, the people making the recommendation, the people that work with him at the FBI.
Right.
So that really, I think, is quite dispositive, of the issue. I mean, you brought a nice humanitarian point to it last week, and you said, well, it's 2 days before the guy's, retirement was going to be up. So you look at that aspect of it. But nevertheless, if the facts are there and persuasive and compelling, then they have to follow through with it.
One, people are saying that if it was just a regular guy in the FBI who, out in the field, and he did what McCabe did, he'd be treated the exact same way. Do you understand that argument?
I don't think that's true, but I understand the argument. I think what's true is that, FBI agents are not rich people and they really rely on pensions. And so typically there's a lot of leeway given, especially respect the idea, oh, he's got 2 days to go, we'll let it happen. But I think what happened here is we don't know. And so what you're seeing Adam Schiff say is it could be that Adam Schiff is just protecting himself from possible blowback. If you get a report from the Inspector General of the Office of Professional Responsibility that indicates that McCabe either lied or was not forthcoming with them, then you would say, okay, so there was justification for it. What we do know is that McCabe has said that's not true, that he either was in chaos and was misunderstood or whatever, but he says he did not lie or mislead them. So that's all we have on the table at the moment, Jesse. But I will say this. Given the politics surrounding everything going on, from the Comey firing to the House Intelligence Committee last week saying, oh, yeah, Russia, they didn't favor Donald Trump. It just looks like when you look at this, you can't ignore the politics. And the politics are stinky.
Obviously, a lot of politics in Washington. That's to be expected, Dana. Do you think it was a little harsh, or do you think, if the internal investigators think he did a bad thing, he should suffer the consequences?
Well, I would like to see the full report before making a determination, because without that, we're just basically going on gut instinct or what we hear or what might have been leaked or not. So until we have that. But I would say that politics are played, except for that if the president hadn't tweeted about this on Saturday morning and rubbing McCabe's face in it, then the storyline would have been the whole weekend is that the Office of Professional Responsibility recommended this firing. And so that, I think, would have been a nice place to just leave it right there and let everybody talk about the Office of Professional Responsibility. That didn't happen.
And that didn't happen. It usually doesn't when the president tweets. Greg, what are your thoughts?
My first thoughts, Dana, hair looks great.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Don't pretend not to notice.
I was more paying attention to what she was saying.
I can do both.
We're the center part twins.
I'm a multitasker. The weird thing here is Brennan's manifesto of a tweet, which was almost like written as part of a West Wing script left over. But then what happens after he says all this magical, manicured stuff? Samantha Powers retweets and writes, don't mess with, you don't want to get this guy angry. It's like high school. It's like being in the high school cafeteria and the cheerleader runs over and says, let me hold your jacket because you're going to get in a fight. I mean, maybe that's that submission that Hillary keeps talking about. But his anger, it reflects the deep animosity that validates Trump's assumptions and assertions about people in power who want him gone. That's the hood ornament. That tweet is the hood ornament of all of these people who sincerely believe that there's a bad man in the White House and they got to get him out. And if you notice, it's the circle of media and the circle of the Trump critics, and they match perfectly. So they're a self-perpetuating engine of panic. So the media says, oh, my God, he's evil, he's evil. And then you have this dude, and you have Comey, and you got the other guy, and this guy, who are in the government saying the same thing. These are the same people. The media and these, I guess you would call them Washington insiders or established, whatever. The reactions are 99.9% identical. So that's where you get the hysteria and the panic, because they're constantly, there's no yin and yang, it's yin and yin.
But do you ever think that it's a possibility that Donald Trump is in the middle of the yin and yang and that they're reacting to something very real?
I would say that if there was some kind of variability in the reaction, but when it's this uniform and hysterical, it makes me think that it is almost emotionally driven.
And also uniform was the reaction to this, and everybody says the next step, Mueller's gone. And let's hear some of that.
I don't know what the designs are on Mueller, but it seems to be building toward that, and I just hope it doesn't go there, because it can't. We can't in Congress accept that.
If he tried to do that, that would be the beginning of the end of his presidency, because we're a rule of law nation.
I would hope that it would prompt all Democrats and Republicans in the House to pass an independent counsel law and reinstate Bob Mueller. This would undoubtedly result in a constitutional crisis. And I think Democrats and Republicans need to speak out about this right now.
So, Kimberly, do you believe there is momentum building for firing Mueller? Or, as Greg said, is this just this self-perpetuation with the media and the Democrats where they almost want this to happen and they're pushing it?
It's a little bit of the self-perpetuation merry-go-round, the one that you want to get out of before you throw up. It's just round and round. But, yeah, I don't think that he's going to make a move like that. I think it would be ill-advised at this point to do something like that, given that this has already gone so far down the road. They're sort of on the 5-inch line. Let them complete the investigation. I don't see any upside for the president in removing him at this juncture. Only downside, there'll be a tremendous amount of fallout and criticism. We saw that when that happened with Comey, okay? And I just don't think this should follow in the footsteps. You've got McCabe gone. Do the investigation, complete it, come to the conclusion, see it through to, all the way through fruition, and then see what we have.
But, Jesse, this isn't the first time that the president may have thought about firing Mueller. Remember, last June, there were reports in January that, he's thinking about it, and then people were saying, no, he would never do it. And then it was confirmed that, in fact, he was thinking of doing just that. And now, again, what we've seen this weekend, boy, I thought he just was manic in the tweets, the attacks on the intelligence community, the FBI.
Juan, there was a deflection. Trump was tweeting, so you didn't notice that he was colluding with Putin to win the election in Russia.
That was it. He was helping Putin.
He was helping Putin win.
I want to give you that. I showed up today. I
wanted to give you a new conspiracy. He helped Putin become president for life. That's your new conspiracy.
Okay.
The best part of this, and I know you hate the word Virtue signaling,
okay,
2 words.
I don't have a
all
ban.
the people offering to pay the pension for McCabe or to pay for the next thing. It's like they care so much about a questionable bureaucrat's pension than actual real suffering.
Oh, that's a good point.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
All right, President Trump. Anything you'd like to add at the end?
Here's what I would say. It's just a little bit of advice. You know, I was spokesperson for Karl Rove during the special counsel, and it's very difficult to figure out the legal strategy and the communication strategy, but they really must work in tandem. It's a terrible idea for the lawyers to be out front and not in communication or coordination with the PR people, because the other thing that happened this weekend or this past week is you had reports that questions from the Mueller team had gone to Trump's lawyers about these are the types of things we might want to ask him if we were to have an interview with him. So they're negotiating that. So now the president knows what that is. There's a subpoena to the Trump organization. There's McCabe's firing. There's the Dowd comments, his lawyer's comments about Mueller that this should all end. And he says, yes, I'm speaking on behalf of the president. And now Relay's like, oh, actually, no, I'm speaking in my own capacity. I don't believe any of that. I actually think that one of their major problems is they have to get their PR people lined up and in sync with their legal people, or they're going to continue to have news cycles like that.
Yep. And it's just amazing after all this, Dana, that Hillary was the one that colluded with the Russians. President Trump rolling out his plan today to fight America's opioid epidemic in a state ravaged by the crisis. Will it work? Up next.
We want to get an update now on those deadly serial bombings out in Texas. 4 mysterious attacks this month in Austin have killed 2, injured 4, and put the state capitol on high alert. The latest now from Fox's Casey Stiegel. Casey.
Hey, Dana, and at this hour, police are still processing back here what is described as a very large and elaborate crime scene. Investigators say that they have quite a bit of evidence that they have to go through and collect back there, not to mention they have been making multiple sweeps of this residential neighborhood just 8 miles or so southwest of downtown Austin to ensure that no additional explosive devices were planted or hidden. Residents have been told to shelter in place until an all-clear has been given. This is an all-hands-on-deck situation with local, state, and federal law enforcement pouring in to help.
What we're doing right now, again, as we've talked about before, this has to be a community response. This is something we're going to solve as a community. The officers that are working in the neighborhoods are paying attention not only for the suspicious packages, but also items that may look out of place. The Department of Public Safety is going to send additional troopers into the Austin area to help us patrol and be visible in the neighborhoods and to help us look for those suspicious items.
Now, authorities will not elaborate on the similarities between the device used last night and those used in the previous 3 crimes, other than that this one was much more elaborate and that it had a tripwire actually connected to it. In other words, a filament or a wire that would cause the package to detonate if it were disturbed. And they believe that's what happened when 2 guys rolled through here on bicycles last night, may have hit that tripwire, causing the blast. So again, authorities say that they believe this is the work of the same person or persons, and they have made it a desperate plea to the public to be vigilant and keep their eyes peeled, reporting any suspicious packages and activity, as this city is on alert, as you can imagine.
All right,
Dana.
Casey, thank you. So it's a top priority of the Trump administration. I'm sorry, as he's talking, I didn't want to interrupt the president. I thought I heard him. He was talking today about combating the opioid epidemic. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under 50. President Trump went to a state ravaged by the crisis today, New Hampshire, where he unveiled his plans to tackle the health emergency. Now let's listen to him.
Scourge of drug addiction in America will stop. It will stop. Our Custom and Border Protection and these people, the job they do is incredible. Seized nearly 1,500 pounds of fentanyl last year, nearly 3 times the amount seized in 2016. If we don't get tough on the drug dealers, we're wasting our time. We will be focusing on the penalty that I talked about previously for the big pushers, the ones that are really killing so many people, and that penalty is going to be the death penalty.
Greg, today the president said that he would have three focuses. One was the law enforcement. The second one was prevention and education through a sizable advertising campaign, which is a little bit of a throwback, but we can also talk about that. And then the third one was improving the ability to fund treatment through the federal government and those impacted by the epidemic to help them find jobs while fighting the addiction. What do you think about the idea of making the penalty stiffer for drug pushers? Will that actually help cut down demand?
I don't know if it will. I mean, look, number one, the politics of it. Trump won because he was a law and order guy. And if you look at everything from immigration to terror, it's all about strength. This issue provided him a perfect opportunity to exercise that. And when you say you're going to kill the dealers, you're not going to find much opposition. However, conservatives must be consistent with this argument. With gun control, you talk about, protecting the law-abiding citizen, going after the bad guy, which I think is what Trump is saying. You do not want to cast a wide net over people who need actual prescription medications to deal with their cancer pain or their other pain disorders, the disorders that often lead to suicidal depression, and these drugs are very necessary for them. So if you start making them feel like criminals, that is wrong. Be consistent and go after the criminal. But finally, this is where my libertarianism kicks in. I don't trust the government on health issues. I mean, if you look at the war on drugs, it hasn't worked out. If you look at prohibition, not a good idea. The hideous nutrition pyramid. We talk about a really bad mistake. We had heart disease and diabetes on the rise, and the nutrition pyramid said, eat low-fat, high-carb foods. That was a mistake. So I'm always suspicious of the government trying to get involved in our health. However, dealing with hardcore dealers who do kill more people than mass shooters, it's not such a bad idea. Just remember, when you make something illegal, though, it's the street drugs that are killing people, right? It's because it's the drug delivery mechanisms that are so unreliable on the street. So we've learned now with medical marijuana and legalization of marijuana that that may be the future for all drugs.
Kimberly, what happens for prosecutors if you increase the penalty and say they increase more cases to include the death penalty? Is that then a deterrent for drug dealers?
Well, there's a lot of different studies on it. There's those that show and point to it that it operates effectively as a deterrent to prevent future criminal conduct. I understand why the president's taking this position. He's trying to show that he's very serious about it, that it's going to stop. But I have to tell you, even among some Republicans, it's be very difficult also to get through anything like this in terms of a death penalty for this type of situation. I was a death penalty prosecutor, and I was on the death penalty panel reviewing cases that were eligible and or appropriate, even if they were eligible for death penalty. And I'll tell you, it's a tough sell. You better have a very compelling case with lots of different elements to qualify. I think he's well intentioned. It shows how serious he is about this, but I think it would be really the chances are going to be negligible that he's going to be able to get something like this through.
Juan, one of the hopes, I guess, for some people would be the president is saying stiffer penalties for those big dealers, but then you have people that are languishing in jails who might have been a small-time drug deal, like a problem, that they have something on their record. Is there a way to maybe do both, like increase the penalties for those top dealers and also have some sort of prison reform or criminal justice reform to help those people who have been unfairly imprisoned?
That's a great idea. I mean, I hadn't thought of it, and I haven't heard that discussed, because I think the people who have been involved in trying to reform the sentencing, and that includes Republicans as well as Democrats, have concluded, much as Greg said, that war on drug things, that didn't quite work out. I have not seen any data that would suggest that the war on drugs was effective. And to the contrary, in this situation, what you see is that people say that when you take the sledgehammer approach and say, we got to get tough with the drug dealers, what you do is you hike up or spike the prison population, but you don't necessarily reduce drug use. We have that on the record. We know that for a fact. And so when you say these kinds of things, it reminds people that, well, we need ideas. Alex Azar, who is the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, has said just that. That's the kind of policy he's producing, but that's not what the president's saying today. So I don't know if this is just rhetoric, but it seems to me like a step back into another world where you think, oh yeah, if we just throw them in jail, who are you going to throw in jail? The people who run the big pharmaceutical companies, who are meeting, as Greg argues, a real need in terms of pain prevention for an older population? I don't know. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is that people who become addicted on the basis of prescription drugs, but then can't get the prescription anymore. Then they go to the guy on the corner.
The president today brought up a family impromptu. They didn't know they were going to be asked to speak, and the mother who had lost her son 2.5 years ago to somebody who had started taking drugs out of the kitchen cabinet and then had to go to the street for it. That was very moving. And so there is the personal side of this, and I feel like the president does a really good job of reaching out to them in particular. And it's like, I am going to help you.
He did that with the opioid deal, and he did it with the gun deal, and it's probably one of his most effective methods of communication is humanizing the issue. You saw him doing it at the State of the Union. I mean, Greg just kind of made me think the food pyramid. I mean, we need to really go after the food pyramid. This thing is dangerous. We got to start reorganizing it, putting the meat at the top, the carbs. I mean, what did they do? They've killed us.
You're absolutely. You think I'm crazy, but if you inverted the pyramid, that's exactly the way you should eat.
Remember Snackwells?
Yeah, Snackwells totally sold on an unsuspecting public. Low-fat foods mean high sugar, which means obesity and diabetes.
Yeah, we need to do the food pyramid story tomorrow, and we're coming at you.
And the president, we hope you give a speech on it soon. All right, clean up on aisle 3. Hillary Clinton tries to mop up her mess of insults to Trump voters, but she might have just made it worse. Next.
So remember last week when Hillary Clinton smeared millions of women?
We do not do well with white men, and we don't do well with married white women. And part of that is an identification with the Republican Party and a sort of ongoing pressure to vote the way that your husband, your boss, your son, whoever, believes you should.
Oh, those evil white men. Well, instead of letting things lie, she took a front-end loader and dug a hole so deep you could fit all her husband's skeletons in it. After claiming women only do what their hubbies tell them to, she said she meant no disrespect, meaning she's so clueless she thought comments made in India somehow wouldn't travel. But she also added this, quote, "I did not realize how hard it would hit many who heard it." So you see what she did there? It's the jab and hide of a typical bitter troll, who tweets, "Hey, you're fat," followed by, "Wow, I guess I struck a nerve." So when she calls women submissive morons, their defiant response means, oh, she has to be right. Now, you could say, Greg, you enjoy Hillary's decline too much.
Yes.
And you'd be right. For I'm thinking, we dodged a bullet. Every time she speaks, she reminds you of why she lost and what she thinks of you. But Hillary's rage is really just a projection. Decades of doing her husband's submissive bidding, it didn't pay off. The world is an unjust place in her vengeful state. I deserve to be president, she thinks, after enduring the humiliations of Bill's betrayals. One man made her feel very small, and she repays that sentiment a millionfold on the female Trump voter, many of whom voted for Obama. It's payback delivered to the wrong people. So, Dems, what do you do with a guest who will not leave? Thank God you're not stuck with her. I hear there's a bright young face on the horizon.
In 2016, it wasn't their year. But in 2020, the Democrats will unleash a brand new candidate to lead the resistance to victory. Someone with a new vision for America. A freedom fighter, a fresh face, a grassroots hero. Her name, Hillary Clinton. This up-and-comer is bitter, mean, cranky, and vindictive. All the things you want in a rising star. In just 4 short decades, she's already given so much to real Americans. Things like hugs, faces, fashion, and totally normal laughter. Plus, this long list of accomplishments. Wow! So vote Hillary Clinton in 2020. She's new, but she'll grow on you.
You know? So, Juan, you were right. I don't want her to go away. I can't live without Hillary. That's why Hillary 2020, Juan, get on the bus.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something.
It's gonna crash.
Here's the bad news for you. She wasn't elected. She's not president. That's why most of America is focused on, oh my God, you said we were saved by her not being elected. I think a lot of people think, oh my God, so the chaos is okay. But here's the thing. Hillary Clinton wasn't wrong. Hillary Clinton, actually, there's studies that show exactly what she said to be true. But like Dick Durbin said, guess what? this wasn't helpful. Because, in fact, it feeds all of the right-wing grievance, oh, Hillary Clinton. And then you had Kellyanne Conway come out, oh, she's not a feminist. She doesn't believe in women. It's what is the case, and what is proven is that numbers shift and that women can feel influenced by husbands, but it's also the case that women might agree with their husbands.
Yes, and you know what's funny? It's a one-way street, Kimberly. Like, if a woman could influence her husband, that's a good thing. But if a husband influences the wife, bad thing.
Yeah, why isn't there some shared cooperation, norms of reciprocity, some just like equality, communicating wise and influence wise? You know, Hillary just can't help herself. She loves being Hillary, meaning she's very consistent in terms of her messaging, what she says, and I think she was being honest there. So I'm glad she was being transparent. She tells us exactly what she thinks, so that's fine. It's no problem. She wants to tell the American people, especially, you know, married women and white men, that she is disappointed in their choices. All right. You know, well, they can make choices based on your information that you're giving and putting out there. And it's not helping the party. That's why they're glad to retire her.
You know, Danny, that one thing she did, you see all the time where somebody will insult you. And then when you go, wait a second, what are you talking about? Oh, it looks like
I'm sorry you felt that way.
Yes. I must have hit a nerve.
Yes. Yeah, that's the worst way to argue with a spouse, too, by the way.
Yeah.
The other thing is that she refuses to talk about policy. Like, the policy choices are actually preferable for Republican women, prefer to vote for Republicans, regardless of who it is. The other thing is that Josh Hawley, who is the candidate running against Claire McCaskill, he has just cut an ad using all of this stuff from Hillary Clinton, and it's pretty effective. So now they can go after Pelosi and Hillary.
You know, Jesse, the irony is she did just about everything Bill told her to do.
Well, yeah, not everything. I think what happened here is it was the typical politician apology. I'm sorry that you misunderstood me, you idiot. That's the kind of apology that she made. And she only apologized because people like Durbin criticized her for it. She wouldn't have said anything if no one had, you know, raised that issue on the right, but it was just because the people on the left did it, she had to say it. I don't think she should have apologized at all. I agree with Kimberly. It shows weakness. If she's shooting from the hip and she's being real, authentic Hillary, let it rip, Hillary. You know what? The book, you know, you said everything you had to say in the book. Go to India, you know, make it rain with the money. Just sing it. I don't care.
It's what she really thinks.
I know. It's what she really thinks. We like authentic Hillary, even if it's authentically pathetic. The Facebook apology was terrible. Yes. It was about 16 paragraphs. That's not how you apologize. You especially don't do it on Facebook.
All right. Speaking of, what a transition, Jesse.
Yeah, right.
Facebook is now under scrutiny. Was the data of millions used for political purposes? That's next.
Facebook now under intense scrutiny over allegations that allowed a firm that worked for President Trump's campaign to harvest the data of 50 million users without their knowledge. The social media giant has suspended the account of Cambridge Analytica and is investigating the possible manipulation of voters. Here's Niall Ferguson's take on the privacy breach in an interview with Dana earlier.
These networks are extremely easy for foreign actors, not necessarily well-intentioned, to intervene in our public life. And that, of course, is, as we all know and have known now for some months, is what the Russians did. Almost as many Americans as voted saw Russian-generated content on Facebook. I don't think that was decisive in the election, but I think Facebook was.
Well, Facebook stock plunged, sending other technology stocks and the market down today. All right, I'm enough with this Facebook thing, Greg. I mean, it's just out of control and tough to manage, and now I knew they were stealing. Go ahead.
I don't think they, you know, here's the thing.
They were.
Silicon Valley, I am no fan of. To me, they are replacing Wall Street as the universal villain of a bunch of wealthy, heartless elitists who think that they live above everybody else. And I think that's why, I hate to use the phrase virtue signal, but they like to cover themselves by being very, very left-wing and acting hypocritical, for example, banning people on Twitter or Facebook like Steven Crowder, but not banning people who attack conservatives.
Like
they don't do that. Yeah, exactly. But I'm not so sure about this story. I'm not sure it's really Cambridge Analytica that's at fault here. I read the Guardian story. The guy who's at the center of this kind of seemed like a BSer. And he was kind of like making himself into the hero. And I'm always skeptical of that, you know? I like people who play it down.
All right, well, get back to us on that when
I will.
do the
I'll do some
investigation.
side research.
Yes. Okay, Dana, what do you make of this?
Well, I think that we'll probably know a lot more soon. Facebook's obviously a global company. They are already facing some questions from the UK's 10 Downing Street, as is Cambridge Analytica. So they'll get questions there. But as Greg said, they're the new villain. So what happens when you have a big villain? They get called up to Capitol Hill to testify, and then people start thinking about regulations. The other thing that's happening at the same time is that conservatives are now agitating again about Facebook, in particular about how the algorithms have changed and how the searches are being done. And so I think they're in big trouble.
Okay, Jess.
Yeah, both parties now hate Facebook. That's tough to do. So congratulations, Facebook.
Consensus, finally.
That's right. I spoke to the Trump campaign today, and they said that they never used any of the data that Cambridge Analytica used from Facebook. What they did was they hired 5 staff members from Cambridge, and they had to sign a deal to get the staffers to come to work with them in Texas. But they never used any of this so-called psychographic modeling. They used data and research from the RNC and from their own internal data network. So a lot of it's trying to paint the Trump campaign as if they reached into Facebook and ripped out all of this in an unethical way. It's just not true. But like you said, it's more about Facebook and protecting their customers' information. And obviously they didn't do a great job about it because they didn't let people know that their data was being mined. And I think Facebook has to answer to that.
Okay, Juan.
Well, I just think this is another reminder that propaganda and sort of the psychoanalytical profiles of people are at play now in elections. And so you can use this data and you can use it without people's permission, and that's illegal, and that's what's at stake here, in a way that influences outcomes of elections without saying, oh, gee, it's the machines. Well, we didn't see any difference. No, but something's going on when you have this much in the water where people are harvesting information about who you are, your preferences, your likes, your dislikes, and understand how they can get to you in a way that will shift your thinking. And I think that's what's behind this. Now, to me, those folks that others on the panel call elite and arrogant and all that, I think they are dumb. Because guess what? I don't think that people who run Facebook understood the power. They think it's just a social network. Guess what? It's a political instrument.
Okay, let's leave it there. Jim Carrey sparking outrage again with his new vile attack on the White House. That's next. Stay with us.
Comedian Jim Carrey's taken up a new pastime in the Trump era. He's now creating portraits to vent his rage against the administration. His latest artwork is not being received well by the masses. He tweeted out a portrait that some say bears resemblance to White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The unflattering image is accompanied by a caption that says, quote, "This is a portrait of a so-called Christian whose only purpose in life is to lie for the wicked. Monstrous." Kimberly?
All right, well, I wouldn't purchase it. You know, I also wouldn't accept it as a free present or gift. You know, obviously this is his rage painting that he's doing, portrait painting, to express his like inner demons and turmoil. He's an individual who has had, you know, kind of a history kind of fraught with frustration and perhaps some mental health issues. So this doesn't come as a surprise to me. It kind of looks like the paintings and portraits that the people that I've experienced that are serial killers and criminals. No, but really, if I have experience in this as a DA, and they send me these pictures and these portraits, and you see some of their writings, and when you do search warrants on their jail cells, if you're doing an active prison case, like when I was dealing with the Aryan Brotherhood, and you see some of the drawings and the musings of those that are a little bit disturbed, it reminds me of this. And I think Sarah Sanders is quite lovely and is working very hard on behalf of the country, and so I have no bid for this painting.
So Jesse set off quite a Twitter war, because now the left was defending him to some extent, and the right was saying this is unfair, even an attack on a Christian. What do you make of it?
I mean, he was always known as an over-actor, and now he's just over. It's sad. He was once a really funny guy. I mean, Dumb and Dumber was one of my favorite movies.
You can relate.
A real cinematic masterpiece, Greg agrees. But it's the sad clown syndrome, and now he's just a tortured soul, it looks like. It's funny how the Me Too movement came out of Hollywood. And now you have someone like Jim Carrey totally discrediting it. It's kind of sick. And if it was on the other foot, and this was a conservative actor doing a portrait of a Democrat. It's just wicked, and it doesn't look nice.
All right. And Dana, her dad, well known to our audience, Mike Huckabee, came out and he said, pathetic, bully, sexist, hater, bigot.
Well, I think he's usually a man of more words than that, but he nailed it. Yeah. I mean, she didn't choose to. She is in the public eye because she was chosen to represent the President of the United States and the American people in the White House briefing room. It's a really tough job, and there's plenty of other people that he could pick on.
The question, Greg, is this just a Twitter war between the left and right, or is this to the point where you think Jim Carrey will be sanctioned by some of the folks in Hollywood?
No. This isn't art, by the way. It's a refrigerator drawing by a child man, not an actual man, a child man. And to prove it, he had to go and present it to mommy and daddy, which was Twitter. Yeah. Oh, please show me the love that I need so desperately. So he puts the little painting out there. He's always been a loathsome creature who punches down. Yep. He always punches down. He goes after the dead, like Charlton Heston. He treats young women of lower status poorly. He uses a manufactured sanctimony to actually harm people. That's what's behind this, is that he thinks that he is morally superior, so I can draw this, refrigerator scrap, and then hopefully people will love me more. Maybe they will, but I doubt it.
I would like for you to draw him for tomorrow.
I will try.
I don't know. Kimberly says she's not buying this kind of art. Not at all.
Remember you gave me that horrible Christmas present?
Yes, I did.
Actually looks similar.
The
style. Similar style.
All right.
Yeah, with the weird
Enough
red
with the
eye,
chaos. One more thing. Up next. Comedian Jim Carrey's taken up a new pastime in the Trump era. He's now creating portraits to vent his rage against the administration. His latest artwork is not being received well by the masses. He tweeted out a portrait that some say bears resemblance to White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The unflattering image is accompanied by a caption that says, quote, "This is a portrait of a so-called Christian whose only purpose in life is to lie for the wicked." Monstrous. Kimberly?
All right. Well, I wouldn't purchase it. I also wouldn't accept it as a free present or gift. Obviously this is his rage painting that he's doing, portrait painting, to express his inner demons and turmoil. He's an individual who has had, kind of a history, kind of fraught with frustration and perhaps some mental health issues. So this doesn't come as a surprise to me. It kind of looks like the paintings and portraits that the people that I've experienced that are serial killers and criminals. No, but really, if I've experienced this as a DA, and they send me these pictures and these portraits, and you see some of their writings, and when you do search warrants on their jail cells, if you're doing an active prison case, like when I was dealing with the Aryan Brotherhood, and you see some of the drawings and the musings of those that are a little bit disturbed, it reminds me of this. And I think Sarah Sanders is quite lovely and is working very hard on behalf of the country, and so I have no bid for this painting.
So Jesse set off quite a Twitter war, because now the left was defending him to some extent, and the right was saying this is unfair, even an attack on a Christian. What do you make of it?
I mean, he was always known as an overactor, and now he's just over. It's sad. He was once a really funny guy. I mean, Dumb and Dumber was one of my favorite movies.
You can relate.
A real cinematic masterpiece. Greg agrees. But it's the sad clown syndrome, and now he's just a tortured soul, it looks like. It's funny how the Me Too movement came out of Hollywood. And now you have someone like Jim Carrey totally discrediting it. It's kind of sick. And if it was on the other foot, and this was a conservative actor doing a portrait of a Democrat, it's just wicked, and it doesn't look nice.
All right. And Dana, her dad, well known to our audience, Mike Huckabee, came out and he said, pathetic, bully, sexist, hater, bigot.
Well, I think he's usually a man of more words than that, but he nailed it. Yeah. I mean, she didn't choose to. She is in the public eye because she was chosen to represent the President of the United States and the American people in the White House briefing room. It's a really tough job, and there's plenty of other people that he could pick on.
The question, Greg, is this just a Twitter war between the left and right, or is this to the point where you think Jim Carrey will be sanctioned by some of the folks in Hollywood.
No, this isn't art, by the way. It's a refrigerator drawing by a child man, not an actual man, a child man. And to prove it, he had to go and present it to mommy and daddy, which was Twitter. Yeah. Oh, please show me the love that I need so desperately. So he puts the little painting out there. He's always been a loathsome creature who punches down. Yep. He always punches down. He goes after the dead, like Charlton Heston. He treats young women of lower status poorly. He uses a manufactured sanctimony to actually harm people. That's what's behind this, is that he thinks that he is morally superior, so I can draw this, refrigerator scrap, and then hopefully people will love me more. Maybe they will, but I doubt it.
I would like for you to draw him for tomorrow.
I will try.
I don't know. Kimberly says she's not buying this kind of art. Not at all.
Remember you gave me that horrible Christmas present?
Yes, I did.
Actually looks similar. The style. Similar style.
All right.
Yeah, with the weird red eyes.
Enough with the chaos. One more thing.
Up next.